Okay, Thursday night shir. A glimpse into the mind of the Minchas Chinuch, if we may. Not that we could imagine what went on truly in the mind of such a great Gadol B'Yisrael, but with his permission, we'll study some of his works, some of his ideas. He was truly a trailblazer. He was revolutionary. He was born in around the year 1800. There's a debate, the exact year. Rabbi Yosef, his name was Rabbi Yosef Ba'abad. It sounds Sephardic, but it was Ashkenazi. He was a chassid, a chassidisher. Ba'abad stands for Ben Av Bezdin. Ba'abad. The Litvishers some of them liked to call him one of their own, but in truth he was a chassidisher. And he was actually a brother-in-law of Reb Chaim Tzanzer. His first wife was a sister of Reb Chaim Halberstam, Reb Chaim Tzanzer. And the Minchas Chinuch himself traveled to some Chassidic Rebbes. He's listed amongst the students of Reb Naftali Ropshitzer, a great Chassidic Rebbe, and also Reb Shimon Yaroslaver. Reb Shimon Yaroslaver, who for some reason is not as well known as he should be. Rabbi Groner Oliver Shalom from Australia, one of my heroes of my youth. So he would tell over a story that we know Reb Shimon Yaroslaver, when he was young, he was very close to Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk. That we know is a fact. And apparently the following story transpired, that this Reb Shimon, he was visited by Reb Elimelech. Reb Elimelech visited Reb Shimon. And when Reb Elimelech left Reb Shimon's place, he was entering into his wagon, and across the road from Reb Shimon's home was a cloister. And on that day there was some holiday, and it was busy, it was packed, lots of action in the cloister. And Reb Shimon tells Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk, in Rabbi Groner's words, "Zerstört mir in avodas Hashem," that this whole business of this cloister is really disturbing my service of Hashem. And Rabbi Elimelech closed his eyes and he concentrated for a moment, and the entire cloister fell to the ground. And it was a major catastrophe what happened. Lots of lives were lost. And the whole area was censored off in dedication to all the lives lost over there. Anyhow, this is this Reb Shimon Yaroslaver. He was one of the Rebbes of the Minchas Chinuch, as Reb Naftali of Ropshitz, and Reb Chaim of Tzanz, one of the great Chassidic Rebbes and a great scholar. Reb Chaim Tzanzer is one of the great Torah scholars of his generation. Was a brother-in-law, apparently a chavruser of the Minchas Chinuch. The Minchas Chinuch was married to the sister of Reb Chaim Tzanzer. It was his first marriage, and later the Minchas Chinuch had another wife. Yeah, I think so, because ultimately he had about 7 kids when he passed away. I think some of them came from that marriage, if I'm not mistaken. He was a rabbi in a number of cities. Ultimately, he's famous for being in a city near Lviv, Lemberg, and the city is known as Tarnopol, and that's where his Zayda, the Minchas Chinuch Zayda, was a great god known as the Sefer Yehoshua. That's the name of his Sefer. So he's called the Sefer Yehoshua, his father's father. And the Minchas Chinuch filled his Zayda's role in that city. And that's when the Minchas Chinuch passed away in the year 1874. So just after the Tzemach Tzedek, 8 years after the Tzemach Tzedek, he passed away. And the Minchas Chinuch apparently wrote plenty of manuscripts. And the story that goes around is that most of it was burnt, was lost, and all he had that remained was Nebuch, his Minchas Chinuch, which is a commentary on the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch goes through the 613 mitzvahs, a bit of philosophy behind each mitzvah, a little bit of the halacha, and it was a very fertile ground to write a commentary, analyzing all the mitzvahs and the halachic aspects. And the Minchas Chinuch felt that this was actually a very, it was a poor work compared to some of his other things. But he felt it was a sign min hashamayim. If everything else was burnt and this is what remains, it's supposed to be printed. The truth of the matter is, most of his work was lost, but it wasn't burnt. It was stolen. The Minchas Chinuch attests to it in his introduction. He says, most of it was stolen from me. So what's the story? So there's different versions. According to one legend, which may or may not have happened, but this is part of the tradition, that he was asked to rule, to be a dayan in a din Torah, between a Misnagdisha family and a Chassidisha family. It was a serious court case, and he agreed to sit on the case. And the way the Litvishes tell over the story, the Chassidisha family were extremely unhappy, and they were the ones that committed the Chassidisha Gneva. And a tremendous amount of his work was stolen. One way or the other, the fact is, he writes in his introduction that most of his work was stolen. His brother-in-law, Reb Chaim Tzandra, came over to comfort him, and Reb Chaim Tzandra finds out that a little bit remains, the work on the Sefer HaChinuch. And Reb Chaim Tzandra told his brother-in-law that it may be small in your eyes, but for the average Jew in the street, this is big stuff, this is great stuff. And it's worth it for you to print. You'll be mazaka the rabbim. This is going to be a wonderful asset for Torah learning for the entire world, for generations to come. And he convinced him, and the Minchas Chinuch went along with it. And thanks to the convincing of Reb Chaim Tzandra, we have the incredible sefer, the Minchas Chinuch, today. So look in number 1. This is from a sefer called the Toldos Minchas Chinuch. We have part of the story. In number 1, it's known that the Rav, the Minchas Chinuch, my voice is a little weak, so I can't scream at anybody today. Chiber harbe Seforim, he made many Seforim in all areas of Torah. But we weren't zeicha to their print because boizu zorim yigiyai, strangers came and they plundered his hard work. It was stolen. And the zois hasiba, that was the reason that he agreed to print the Minchas Chinuch. He really didn't want. But when he saw that everything else was stolen, his works on Chumash, his works on Shulchan Aruch, everything was stolen and one thing remained, the Minchas Chinuch remained, he saw this as a sign from heaven that the Eibishter wants him to publish it, so he published it. In the 5th line, Mesuper, it's told that at that time, he was sitting in pain. He was highly distressed. Years and years of his work was just taken from him. And imagine, it was stolen in a way is worse than if it was burnt. You know the word of Rabbi Yonasan Eibishter. Rabbi Yonasan Eibishter said it's funny. Sometimes a butcher comes to me and asks me about a cow, if it's kosher or treif. And if I tell him it's treif, he throws it out willingly, even though it's worth $1,000. Then you can have a court case over $100. I tell a guy, you win, you lose, and the guy's mamish beroiges. I don't get it. This is 100 and that's 1,000. What's pshat? The answer is not the 100 or the 1,000. It's that the other guy won. In the court case, it's Reuven and Shimon. It's not the fact that Shimon lost 100. It's the fact that the other guy got it. You know, so if the Eibishter burnt my Seforim is one thing, but if somebody else stole it from me, stole it from me. Anyhow, but he was tremendously pained. Yoshev B'tzar al Abdon Roiv Amolav Yegiyah. So much of his work, his effort, it was all taken from him, it was all lost. His Chidushei Torah that he put down over many, many years. You know, it happened by the Rabbeim. There were numerous Sreifas. In Lubavitch, there were numerous Sreifas that Tzemach Tzedek had who knows how many contrasim that he wrote, all burnt. The Alter Rebbe, so much of his Shulchan Aruch burnt. His Sefer Shel Tzadikim that the Alter Rebbe wrote, burnt. And then famously he asked the Mittler Rebbe, do you remember what it said in the Sefer? And the Mittler Rebbe told his father, Tate, you told me not to look in the Sefer. And the Alter Rebbe said, where was your Mesidus Nefesh for Chassidus? Should have looked in anyway. So this is painful, and it's happened anyways. So his brother-in-law, the Divrei Chaim, the Chaim Tzandra, came to comfort him. And Bein Advarim, in conversation, he asked him, Im nishaloi mashu leplato, did anything remain? So Heshiva, so the Minchas Chinuch said, yeah, the Minchas Chinuch, the little thing that I wrote on the Sefer HaChinuch is geblieben, and that remained. Sheboi ktsas hagois, I'll Sefer HaChinuch, a couple notes. Right, today it's 3 huge books. A couple notes on Sefer HaChinuch, which means you can imagine the guy must have had bookshelves worth of manuscripts. I have a couple notes, a couple folios in the Sefer HaChinuch. So Reb Chaim Tzandra told him, Nibeloi, he prophesied to him, Shesifroi zeh, this book is skabel ba'ava b'chol tfutzas Yisrael. This is going to be a classic. It's going to be a classic by all Jewish denominations. This is a tradition in the family, in a Sefer Ateres Chaim. It adds that he prophesied they're going to learn this book until Mashiach comes. So we're learning it tonight, okay? And Mashiach is coming very soon, so we're fulfilling the prophecy of Reb Chaim Tzandra. Now, the Rebbe was a major fan of the Minchas Chinuch, there's no question about it. The Rebbe would quote the Minchas Chinuch by name, by many Farbrengens. The Rebbe didn't quote that many Seforim by name. Even when the Rebbe would now I wasn't by Farbrengens, but you can read it, and some of them you can hear, and you can hear from people that were there. Often the Rebbe would say there are Achronim, it says in Seforim, but how many Seforim Achronim are there that Rebbe would actually say their name? There's a few, but the Minchas Chinuch was one of them. And you can actually see on some videos the Rebbe would say there was a tremendous Chavivus, it was very precious, it was very dear Sefer. And my father says he remembers, I guess 50 years ago, plus when you were Bar Mitzvah Bocher, this was the classic gift. The classic gift was Minchas Chinuch. That was the class. Now Minchas Chinuch is very expensive, so now we give Shagas Aryeh. It's one Sefer, but it was a classic gift with Minchas Chinuch. It was even Reb Chaim Brisker, who was so he's a generation younger than the Minchas Chinuch. And Reb Chaim Brisker was a world-class scholar in his own right. We had a shir about him a couple of weeks ago, and and he knew how to judge a true scholar from a. And he said he was incredible praise about the Minchas Chinuch. The Minchas Chinuch is one of the few Achronim that Reb Chaim Brisker truly held of. So the Minchas Chinuch, although he was a Chassidisha, he gets the stamp of approval from all Jewish denominations. In the Rebbe's Lekutei Sichos, he's everywhere. And it was hard selecting and choosing some excerpts from the vast treasures of the Minchas Chinuch, but I went through and did a bit of selecting of what I thought might be interesting and intriguing to see a little bit of what he brought to the table as far as Torah scholarship. And here are some tidbits, a number of tidbits. Each thing is, things which are completely not related. A couple things related to Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, and Sukkot. Other things related to completely other areas of halacha. And for your interest and consumption, I hope you enjoy. Let's begin. We begin with number 2, a famous debate that the Minchas Chinuch tackles the Sefer HaChinuch himself. The Minchas Chinuch generally doesn't argue on the Sefer HaChinuch. He uses the Sefer HaChinuch as a springboard to discuss the various areas of halacha, his various areas of analysis. That it's a springboard, and it's a tact that if you want to write a Sefer, which it's gonna go public, it's gonna go wild. You want to get fertile ground. You want to get a Sefer no one's written on, to be original. So the Netziv took the She'iltas, which he didn't really have a running commentary on, and he wrote his Eimek She'el on the She'iltas. And so the Minchas Chinuch took the Sefer HaChinuch, and there are a few other Seforim, but if anybody's looking, there are a few other Rishonim that don't really have a good running commentary. If anybody wants ideas, I'm happy to give. And, And you can be on those, you can be in the Seforim stores, you can be in the window of the Seforim stores. You can have your Seforim, and you can be the new sefer given to the next bar mitzvah bacher. But usually the Minchas Chinuch doesn't argue with the sefer. The sefer Chinuch is from the Rishonim, Rabbi Aaron Alevi of Barcelona. It's usually attributed to the Ra'ah, the great Rabbi Aaron Alevi, the student of the Ramban, the contemporary of the Rashba, and from the great Rishonim. And the Minchas Chinuch rarely argues, but here's one of the cases where he does. The Sefer HaChinuch believes when it comes, this is related to something a week ago or so, there is a mitzvah to remember what Amalek did to us when we left Mitzrayim. Now, how often do you have to remember the war of Amalek? The Sefer Chinuch describes it could be once in your life, it could be once a year, once every few years. Some Rishonim believe it's once every day. That's what we do. We're machmir once every day. But the Sefer Chinuch holds women are potter. Women are exempt. In addition, there's a mitzvah to wage a war against Amalek. Says the Sefer Chinuch, women are potter from that war. Women are potter from both mitzvahs. Comes the Minchas Chinuch, and he wants to disagree with the Sefer Chinuch on both accounts. As far as the war, he says, there's a general rule. By Mulchemes Chayvel, Mulchemes Mitzvah, Afilu Chosen Mechupasa, Kala Mechupasa, even a Kala has to leave her wedding. Why would a woman be exempt? But then he comes to the clincher. Even if it's true that women are exempt from the war against Amalek, why would they be exempt from the other mitzvah of commemorating what happened? Is the mitzvah of commemorating only a preparation to the war itself? Look what he writes in number 2. Gam mi amad b'soid Hashem yisparach. Who knows the secrets of God? Im ata machmas nekama. Do you think the reason that you consistently recall what Amalek did to us as we left Egypt, just in order to stir the hearts, in order we should be ready and prepared to take vengeance at the appropriate time, in order that the chinuch should say, if women are potter from the war, therefore they're necessarily potter from recalling what they did to us as well? Who says it could be Gzeiris HaKosav? Maybe God has a decree that we should remember the hate of Amalek for some reason or another. V'anachnu ein yodim. Maybe even if women are potter from destroying Amalek, from the mitzvah of Mechias Amalek, but maybe they're chayiv in the mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek, of remembering what they did to us. And maybe even when Mashiach comes, when Amalek is destroyed completely and utterly, and there won't be any remnant of them at all, Mikol Makom, nonetheless, perhaps, the Zechira will be Tamid. Maybe there'll always be a mitzvah to remember what they did and not to forget. Maybe. Who said one is linked to the other? Al Kain, therefore, Tzarechiyun. I don't know why he patters women from mitzvahs asezu of remembering at least once a year what Amalek did to us. And therefore, it seems to me, he says, that all people of Yidden, all Jewish members, Chayovim are Chayev, just like every mitzvah's essay which is not bound by time, men and women Kain Nira. The Minchas Chinuch believes women have to go to shul Shabbos Zocher. The Sefer HaChinuch holds women don't have to go. The Shabbos before Purim, which is the once a year, when we learn, officially, we also learn Shabbos Zocher in Parshas Kiseitze. But the Shabbos before Purim, when we officially fulfill the mitzvah of remembering what happened to us when we left Egypt, when Amalek attacked us, the Sefer HaChinuch says women are potter. And the Minchas Chinuch takes the liberty to argue. Now you should know, in Russia, the women in Lubavitch and many places, generally the custom was to rely on the Sefer HaChinuch, that women did not go to shul, even Parshas Zocher. They just didn't. Now, we've become more frum in many areas of life. Our tefillin are much more mehuda than they once were, right? You have your microscopes over here, telescopes, making sure they're perfectly square and no cracks in the letters, etc. And part of our frumkeit is that women go to shul or many of them go on Shabbos Zocher. And part of that came because of this psak of the Minchas Chinuch, that he argued on the Sefer HaChinuch. Anyhow, that's one thing that.
Does he have somebody that agrees with him, like the audition, and he's supported, just argues on his own?
It's based on many ideas, that it's a mitzvah's essay not bound by time. Even if it's connected to the war, but Pashas der Chayiv in the war.
Why did he
What?
It's so simple. Why in the chinuch?
No, the Sefer HaChinuch for some reason holds that women are. What's pshat in Sefer HaChinuch?
So
Yeah, no. He doesn't. He believes the Sefer HaChinuch here is. He doesn't defend the Sefer HaChinuch.
what would the chinuch say?
Oh, how would we defend the Sefer HaChinuch? Okay, we need a shir about that before Purim. How to defend the Sefer HaChinuch's psak?
Would it make a difference in the daily shield or lifetime shield?
Well, that's the shah. The Sefer HaChinuch himself is mesupik. Maybe it's only once in your life. Maybe once in your life. You have to remember. Okay. You guys ready for a brain teaser?
Maybe it's a mitzvah to me this.
Constantly? No, it's not a mitzvah to me. You don't always have to remember. The Kesef Mishnah, Rabbi Yosef Kaira writes that whenever you have a mitzvah saseh, where the Eibishter does not give a set time, it's once every 24 hours. So Birchas Kohanim, once every 24 hours. The Rambam holds it's a mitzvah aseh min ha-Torah to daven. Tefillah is a mitzvah aseh min ha-Torah. It's once every 24 hours. Tefillin will be once every 24 hours. So the Zchiras are once every 24 hours. The Ramban holds it's a mitzvah aseh to remember Zocher es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadshay. The Rambam holds it's only Shabbos, Kiddush, Havdalah. The Ramban holds it's every day. The Ramban holds Zocher means constantly. But it doesn't mean Tamidus. It means once every 24 hours. Every day. Hayom Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Sheni b'Shabbos. Every day make a point to remember that this is remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim. Once every 24 hours. Okay, there it's also once every 12 hours. If you hold, the Ra'ah actually holds that the mitzvah to remember at night is only the Rabbanon. The Alter Rebbe holds days the Raisa at night, like the Rambam b'Pashtus. Fine. Okay, so we got to get the cobwebs out of our head for number 3. Okay, are you ready for this? The Minchas Chinuch's famous conundrum in number 3. Oy dani mistapik. I have a question. In biyoim shloishim shel Adar. It's the 30th day, the month of Adar. Bo Eidim Kshedim, 2 kosher witnesses come. Sheroas achodesh. They come and they say, we saw the new moon last night. They come on the 30th day of Adar. They're here 11 a.m. They say, we saw the new moon last night, and therefore today is really the first day of Nisan. In order to sanctify today as the first day of Nisan. Ubo Eidim, 2 other Eidim come, that today is their bar mitzvah. Shenoldu, they were born Yud Gimel Shana Kaidim, they were born 13 years ago on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Va'atar now, but Rosh Chodesh Nisan they become Gedolim. It's their bar mitzvah. Umezim esa Eidim Akshedim. Now they say that these other Eidim were not where the first Eidim say that last night we saw the moon next to this mountain. And these bar mitzvah guys say, hello, last night you were at our bar mitzvah, you weren't even where you say you were. You see, these 2 bar mitzvah guys, they're chapping arayin. Now they're finally men, they storm into Bezdin. Now you take us seriously. Now we're adults. Now our voices are finally heard, right? For 13 years, no one took us seriously. For 13 years, no one heard and listened to us. We were kids. Finally, we can make a difference in the world. Or they passel them be'eza avera. Or they say that these 2 guys did an avera. Now, you're not believed as an adult on what you saw as a child. So they have to say that they saw these guys do an avera in the last couple hours. Shero hayoim sha'asu eidim kshem. These bar mitzvah guys say they faced 2 hours ago. These guys, they just ate in McDonald's. They had breakfast in McDonald's. So here's the shayla. Listen, I'll tell you outside the question. If you're going to believe the second Eidim, what's going to happen? That means that the first Eidim are disqualified. Which means that today becomes back the 30th of Adar. If it's the 30th of Adar, the second guys aren't actually bar mitzvah. And their whole celebration last night was tam pater of geld. That means that they're not accepted. That means the first Eidim are still kosher. If the first Eidim are still kosher, then what happens? Then they're accepted again. If they're accepted again, then it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. If it's Chodesh Nisan, then these kids are kosher again. It's going to become a circle. What do you do? What do you do? This is one of his famous conundrums. Okay, so he says, "Heyach lodun bedin." How do you judge this? Im lo yekablu bezdin es eidim akshedim. Mitam zeh. If you're not going to accept the first group, kivon de ika eidim shepoislenaisam, because the second bar mitzvah guys are parceling them, ha im lo yikatshu. If you're going to accept the bar mitzvah guys, and therefore you're going to knock off the first people, which means you're not mekadosh the month. Im kain hayoim oid adar, it's still adar, it's not nisan. If it's not nisan, then v'loy nasu apoislen gedolim, then the bar mitzvah guys are not gedolim. If they're not gedolim, the ktanim are not able to passel the eidim. Right? And it comes out that you have people telling you it's Rosh Chodesh, you have to listen to them. Bezdin will violate the mitzvah. You have kosher eidim telling you it's Rosh Chodesh and you're not accepting. You have to accept them. So then it's good. You have to re-accept the first eidim. That you're going to have to make it Rosh Chodesh. And then the guys become kosher again. And if they become kosher again, then you have to passel the first. You passel the first, you passel the kids. The first times come kosher again, and it's chayzer chalila. What?
You wouldn't be able to listen to edus from them that would remove their adult status. They wouldn't be kosher to give edus on that, because that would automatically destroy anything that they do. For any other type of edus they can give, for edus that would remove their status as an adult, they can't give edus on that.
No, but maybe you can't accept the first eidim either because their edus necessitates that they disqualify themselves. The first eidim as well, when as this circle goes around, every time you want to accept the first, you already see the end of the circle. The first eidim means that there are people here who are going to be kosher who are going to passel them. So how can you do that? Maybe you can't accept either. You know, this idea of circular logic, there was a famous Gaon called the Ilui Meitchat, the genius of Meitchat, who had a famous question about migui. That we say that sometimes a person pulls out a weak claim in court, which really we shouldn't believe the claim. But we say if the person was a liar, so that let's say they say claim B. But if they're a liar, they could have said claim A. And claim A, they would have been believed. So why would they be a fool and say claim B? If they're lying, they're shooting themselves in the leg by saying claim B. So they must be saying the truth. So the Ilui Meitchat asks, well, maybe once they know that, maybe they'll dafka say claim B because they'll know they'll be believed. So he said, you're right. So what are you going to do now? So you're going to invalidate the migui. The taka say the migui's off. But now if somebody says claim B, he must be saying the truth. So now the migui's on. Once the migui's on, then a liar will dafka say the weaker claim. So then the migui has to be off. But the moment it's off, then if anybody says it, he must be saying the truth. So it becomes a circular logic. The migui goes on and off and on and off entirely. It becomes a circle. So he said that's why the halacha is, if a claim is backed by a migui, it works to hold on to money you already possess. But migui lo haitzi lo yarminon. A claim backed up by a migui is never powerful enough to extract money from somebody else. That's the halacha we paskin. It's machlokes in the paskim. Some Rishonim hold a migui is powerful enough to bolster your claim, even to extract money. But we paskin, like Taisus, who holds that a migui is only enough to bolster your claim for money you already possess. So he says because it's a constant circle, it works, it doesn't work constantly, it works and doesn't work the whole time. So that's why it doesn't work to extract money, because Every moment it works, but it doesn't work. So how could you use it to extract? It works, but doesn't work at the same time. On the other hand, it uses to defend. Because when someone wants to take from you, it works, but doesn't work, but also works at the same time. Anyhow, that's the Minchas Chinuch has a similar dilemma in number 5. Look at this. What?
Mitzvah, if it's a zman or if it's a simonim, if it's simonim, regardless of if you do an extra month, it's still be bar mitzvah.
No, but if it's not Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's not Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
They're 13 years old, it's simonim.
No, but it has to be the day plus the simonim. It's not the day. So the Minchas Chinuch, this one I don't have on the paper, but imagine, if on Shabbos writing is one of the 39 malachas, right? What if you write on top of a ksav? You have a ksav, and you write on top. That's not called ksiva, because you're gaining nothing. But imagine you have a get that was written shaloi lishma, so it doesn't count, right? A get was written for a woman, and it was written not for her in mind, therefore it doesn't count. But you rewrite the ink on top, having in mind lishma. So it works. So imagine on Shabbos, you have somebody writing this get for a woman. Again, the get already has a prior ksav, which was invalid. And a guy is writing on top of it a new ksav, on top of the old one, exactly on top of the old one, having in mind for the woman. So So the issue is, the shaila is kaisiv, but the shaila is, according to some Rishonim, you hold on, as he's writing it, he's being mechalel Shabbos. He's being mechalel Shabbos, he becomes a mummer. He's a mummer, he's not fit for writing a get. But if he's not fit for writing a get, then he's not making a kosher get. If he's not making a kosher get, what's he doing? He's just adding ink on previous ink. Then he's not doing anything. Then he's not being mechalel Shabbos. If he's not being mechalel Shabbos, then he's not a mummer.
Yeah, he only becomes a mummer once to get in.
That's some Rishonim hold. That's machlekes. Do you become only after or during? We're talking about the shittus of during. As it happens.
Meaning like what he said, what's the malacha here?
What?
Kaisiv. Even though he's not the one that's writing, he's not adding anything, he's not taking away anything. It's the same letter.
No, the old writing doesn't count, but he's reapplying new ink. What?
Kaisiv has to do with what you can see. You're changing something.
No, you're reapplying new ink.
So every time he writes a letter,
You're reapplying new ink. Yeah, exactly. It's only going to be kaisiv if you accomplish something. It's only going to be kaisiv if you accomplish something.
When he's finished, not during each thing. He's not accomplishing.
No, so
you're saying he's accomplishing something after every letter that goes through.
So this is the shiloh, the same circular logic, and he has a similar thing in number 5. He has a thing about bris milah. Look at this, a good one. He says, imagine a kid who, it's a month after the kid was born. And if the kids, it's not the 8th day, you can't do the milah on Shabbos, right? Only if it's the 8th day do you do milah on Shabbos. If it's not the 8th day, you can't do milah on Shabbos. Somebody decides, I'm doing the bris on Shabbos, and willfully, bemazed, openly, often at hate, they're doing the bris milah on Shabbos. So the guy's being mechalel Shabbos. Bris milah is considered because of chayvel or sheichet or whatever the issue is. It's breaking Shabbos, and if it's not the correct time, you have no authority. If it's not the 8th day, it's considered chilul Shabbos. You're not authorized to do it. So the question is, so then you become your mechalel Shabbos, you could become a mummer. According to many, a mummer is like a goy and can't affect the bris.
It's a little different than writing.
No, it's a similar thing. It's a similar shaila. He can't affect the bris. So here's the question. Does such a bris work? If you take a kid that's not supposed to have that bris on Shabbos, and the guy willfully makes the bris on Shabbos, let's say publicly, but willfully makes the bris on Shabbos. You can say like this, it's going to be the circular logic. On the one hand, the guy's breaking Shabbos, he's a mummer. And if he's a mummer, then the bris doesn't work. But if the bris doesn't work, he hasn't broken Shabbos because he was makalkal. He was makalkal. Makol makalkal on Shabbos Peturin. So if he's makalkal, then he didn't break Shabbos. If he didn't break Shabbos, he's not a mummer. If he's not a mummer, it's a good bris. If he's a good bris, he broke Shabbos. He broke Shabbos, he's a mummer. If he's mummer, it's not a good bris. If it's not a good bris, then he didn't break Shabbos. Anyhow, these are a couple examples of the conundrums of the...
Bris would have to be different than...
because we have a mile over here. Okay. Anyhow, yeah, what? Okay. These are a couple examples.
The baby has a bris.
So the question is, right. No, the question is, it could still be makalkal. Right. So the Minchas Chinuch discusses that, it could still be, it's not considered makalkal because at the end of the day, he's not an oral.
Right.
But if you have to be matif dam bris, you could tine it. No, you could tine it still a kilkul.
He's chayiv the instant he starts.
You could tine it still a kilkul. Okay, fine. Let's move. Okay, that's just a couple examples of the circular logics that the Minchas Chinuch brings up. Number 4 is just a good old example of the Minchas Chinuch being ma'ayin in a mitzvah saseh and kind of just breaking it apart. And he really fashioned a new path of learning and he opened the way. And since him, everybody's been following suit. When it comes to the Birchas Hamazon, v'chalta v'savata, you eat, you get full, and you bench, right? Rabbi Akiva Eiger is a famous shaila. V'chalta v'savata. And then you have to bench. Is the main thing the eating, or is the main thing the being full? Do you have to bench from eating, or do you have to bench from being full? Now the Torah says both, but he says imagine like this. Imagine a kid right before he turned bar mitzvah, eats wie ze darf zu sein. And then he becomes bar mitzvah and is mamish full. He's v'savata. So as a bar mitzvah guy, his v'savata, he became full. But he did the v'achalta as a 12-year-old. So how do you read the pasuk? He says, of course you need both. Let's say if somebody became full without eating, then you wouldn't have to bench. Or if somebody ate and didn't become full, you also wouldn't have to bench. But take this case of the cotton. Does the Eibishter want that you should become full and it just has to come through eating? Or he wants both things to have happened, let's say in the case of the kid when you are bar mitzvah? What do you do in that case? When the kid stuffed himself as a 12-year-old and boom, the clock ticks his bar mitzvah and is stuffed. So his visavata, it came through eating, but the action of eating didn't happen while he was bar mitzvah. Is he biblically chayiv to bench? Or since the act of v'achalta didn't happen at bar mitzvah, he's only chayiv rabbinically to bench? This is a shaila of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. So the Minchas Chinuch, who was younger than Rabbi Akiva Eiger, he discusses a very similar. Look at number 4. He says he feels tarti bin when it comes to benching. You need both. You need achila, you need to eat. You need tzvi, you need to become full. In order to become chayiv and benching, you need 2 things. You need the act of eating and the act of satiation. He says, for example, what if somebody ate b'hafsaka? What if somebody ate with interruptions? Generally by eating treifa food, you have to eat the full amount in the requisite amount of time. Bichdei achilas pras, let's say 6 minutes, 8 minutes. What if you had a bit now and a bit in an hour? It doesn't join together. So too over here. Im ochal b'hafsaka, if you ate a little bit of the bread here, and you ate a little bit later, af shesava, even though at the end you're full loy mitzdarf, it won't join. You need the act of eating. V'chein so to achila beloy svia gamkein lom. If you eat and you're not full, doesn't help. You need the complete act of eating. You need the act of becoming full. But he says, Ze'ani masupik. He said, I'll tell you my question. He says, Efsher sagi kazayis b'chtei achila pras tahava v'achalta. He says, maybe the v'achalta, right? You need a kazayis within 6 or 8 minutes to have the v'achalta. But then to become full, you could eat a little bit over the next couple hours as long as you get full. V'hamoisa, the rest, until you become full, could be ba'afsaka, could be over gradually over intervals. Or maybe the entire sevilla needs to be within achilas pras and not more. V'tzarachim.
Larger people would never make a bris.
What? Exactly, yeah. You see, this is like a classical Minchas Chinuch where he's trying to dissect the mitzvah. You need achila. You need sevilla. Halachic achila needs to be within achilas pras, within 6 to 8 minutes to get achila. You also need sevilla. The question is, does the sevilla also need to be within achilas pras? But then he gets even v'zeh pashut. He says, what if you ate shaloi kederech achila? There's a normal way of eating, and then there's eating by through the veins. There's other ways of putting food into your system, not through the mouth. Or even through the mouth, if you wrap food in bitter, if you wrap it in a tube, or even within bitter leaves, there's many ways of eating which halachically is considered an abnormal way of eating. And when it comes to eating treifa food, if you eat it in an abnormal way, it doesn't count. So what about by Birchas Hamazon? What if you ate in an abnormal way? He says, Kol deloi chayiv al isurim eina nikra achila kan. If it's not considered eating for a prohibition, it's not eating for here either. The eina chayiv on Birchas Hamazon because achila ksiv. And the efsher also on the sevilla because the sevilla needs to be in a way of achila. Or he says, maybe not. Maybe only the first kazayas, but the rest of it, how you become full, could be different. V'tzarachiyun. You see, just an example of how he really wants to get to the nitty-gritty of each of these. He goes more, but what? A lot of these things he gets. Throughout his work, he writes, I'm being ma'orer. I'm asking, I'm pointing out, and I want you to ten l'chochem yech kamoid. I'm bringing it to your attention. Go on the next page. Here's where things get exciting. Number 6 was rubbed out, but the Minchas Chinuch has a famous shitta when it comes to Peru U'revu. When it comes to the mitzvah of Peru U'revu, there is a well-known kasha from the Shagas Arya. Okay? The Shagas Arya is a well-known kasha. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, if somebody, God forbid, has a seizure by, let's say, by the Seder, and he ate matzah during the seizure, and then he recovers, he has to eat matzah again. Because during the seizure, he was potter for mitzvahs, he's not chayiv in mitzvahs. If you do the act of the mitzvah while you're potter, doesn't count. You got to do it again when you recover and you're chayiv. So here's the shaila. If somebody has children while they were a goy, and then they convert. So the Eish Lakish says you got to have new kids. Rabbi Yochanan says no. Rabbi Yochanan says your kids are your yaitze. And the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan. According to some shittas, the kids don't have to convert. The Vilna Gaon holds the kids don't have to convert, and others, which is very hard to understand. The kids are goyim. How do you fulfill the mitzvah? If you stam have kids with a goyish woman, no one holds you fulfill the mitzvah because the kids aren't your kids. In this case, when the father himself produced the children while he was a goy, they were his kids as a goy because goyim have yachas, there's yichus. Then he converts, so some hold his yaitze.
The mitzvah was given to other mission, not to Yidden specifically. Didn't the Rebbe say that about
what?
The tax breaks in Israel, that they shouldn't take them away from Goyim because they also have the mitzvah Peru U'revu or something?
L'sheves yitzara. But Peru U'revu is already, what do you want to say? Peru U'revu was, the Gemara said in Sanhedrin, that any mitzvah which was written before the Torah was given, before Parshas Yisroi, and written again after Parshas Yisroi, so one of them applies to Goyim, one applies to Yidden. But Peru U'revu doesn't appear again after Parshas Yisrael. If it only appears once in the Chumash, then it only applies either to Goyim or to Yidden. And to say it only applies to Goyim is ludicrous, it can't be, so it must be it only applies to Yidden. Right, the Gemara says, Mi komidi, can't be there's something that only applies to the Goyim and not to the Yidden, so it only applies to Yidden. So Rabbi Yochanan holds that the guy's Megayer, his Mekayim Peru U'revu. It's a fact the Shagasaria, but he had the kids while he was a guy. What's the difference with the guy who ate the matzah during the seizure? That's his kasha. So the Minchas Chinuch answers there's a major difference between eating matzah or Peru U'revu. The mitzvah is not to have children. It's to have children. The mitzvah is not to produce children. The mitzvah is the existence of children. The mitzvah is being the father of a boy and a girl. That's the mitzvah. There are some, the Reb Shlomo Kluger writes, there are some that believe adopting children, you can fulfill the mitzvah. He writes, according to some poskim, you can mamash be yotze the mitzvah. The production, for a man to be with his wife and all of those activities is hechsher mitzvah. When the baby is born, that is the fulfillment of the mitzvah. When the baby's been having the child being, the child existing. So therefore says the Minchas Chinuch, when this guy had a boy and a girl, right? And then his Megayer, you know why Rabbi Yochanan says he fulfills the mitzvah? He's doing it now. He's doing it now as a Jew. By the guy who had seizures by the matzah, he did the whole act while he had the seizures. It doesn't count. But here, the guy produced the children as a guy. The mitzvah is not the production. The mitzvah is the fact that you're the cause of their existence, and that is always true. When you're a Megayer and now you're a Jew, these people exist because of you, thanks to you, and that's true now as a Jew. That's how the Minchas Chinuch answers the question. So in number 6, he says, a whopper, what if somebody gives birth to a mamzer? Someone as a kid, a mamzer. Do they fulfill the mitzvah of Peru U'revu? So according to most poskim, you do. So frek the Minchas Chinuch, that means if somebody has a forbidden relation and they produce offspring, you fulfill the mitzvah. Frek the Minchas Chinuch, what happened to mitzvah abba ba'avera? And according to many opinions, if a mitzvah comes through an avera, it's biblically disqualified. Tosfos happens to hold that a mitzvah haba ba'avera is only a psul d'Rabbanan. Tosfos in Masechta Sukkah says a mitzvah that comes through an avera, Minat the mitzvah is still good. It's d'Rabbanan that the mitzvah is no good. Midrabbanan you have to do the mitzvah again. But many Rishonim hold that Minat the mitzvah is no good. So how could we paskin that if you have a kid who's a mamzer, you're yotze Peru U'revu, it's a mitzvah that came through an avera. So the Minchas Chinuch explains in number 6, look in the 4th line, V'yoshavti al pisvaras achronim. I explained, the 6 is on the 2nd page, top right side. Sorry, the 6 is cut off. I explained based on the achronim, the Shara Melech, that a mitzvah haba ba'avera, I'll say it outside, is only a problem if b'shas you fulfill the mitzvah, you violate an avera. If b'shas you fulfill the mitzvah, you violate an avera. You can't fulfill the will of God if at that moment you violate the will of God. You can't be mekayim the Ratzon Hashem if that very moment you're over the Ratzon Hashem. But there are many mitzvahs where you divide between the fulfillment of the mitzvah versus the preparatory stages of the mitzvah, right? What if you do an aveira in the preparatory stages of the mitzvah, and later on you want to fulfill the mitzvah? And at the time of the fulfillment, there's no aveira being committed. Only at the time of the hechsher mitzvah. That's fine. Then the mitzvah is not disqualified. Says the Minchas Chinuch, if somebody cohabits with a woman who's asur to him, even an isur kares, a married woman, which a capital crime, b'shas the intimacy, it's a horrible avera, and it's mamish neged eibish's rotzen. And taka, at that point, it's impossible to say any mitzvah could happen, obviously. But later on, a child is born. When do you fulfill the mitzvah of Peru U'revu? When the child is born. At that moment, no Aveira is happening. It came through an Aveira could happen at the time of the Hechsher Mitzvah. It doesn't invalidate. At the time you fulfill the will of Hashem, no Aveira is happening. That's how he answers it. It's a fascinating theory of the Minchas Chinuch.
You said that is a father.
No, he says by what?
He said being a father.
Exactly. It happens later. It happens when the baby is born. It happens when the baby is born. At that time, there's no Aveira being committed. By lulav, b'shas, you take the lulav, you're being over on a mitzvah saseya v'heshiva sagzela. When you steal a lulav from somebody, first of all, you stole it. Now, even though you're planning to give it back soon, but at that moment, you have a mitzvah saseh to give it back to the guy. You're being mavatal the mitzvah saseh. Mashenkin, by the child, when the baby's born, there's no violation of the Eibish's Ratzon. It's a fascinating mincha, famous Minchas Chinuch. Join me in number 7, a Minchas Chinuch on Rosh Hashanah. A Minchas Chinuch on Rosh Hashanah. Says the Minchas Chinuch, the Sefer Chinuch holds that there's a mitzvah l'shmaya. The mitzvah of the shofar is to hear. What?
Make a first bracha too.
The chalta.
Make the first bracha. Make a shaka.
Birchas hamazon. So when it comes to a bracha, the halacha is even by that. Let's say you steal wheat from somebody, okay, and you turn it into matzah. You don't have to give that matzah back to the person. You're koine b'shinui. If you steal an item from someone and you change it, then you're koine b'shinui. By changing the item, you acquire it, and you only owe cash. You have to pay cash. So that you're yoytze the mitzvah with that matzah. If you steal matzah from someone and you eat it, you're not yoytze, because every bite you're taking, you're poshet stealing. Before you took the bite, you needed to give back that matzah. It's even worse than the lulav. Here, every bite you're taking, you're poshet stealing. But if you stole wheat and you grind it and you turn it into matzah, you don't have to give that matzah back to the guy. You pay him cash, and therefore, if you eat that matzah, you fulfill the mitzvah. Nonetheless, since it came through gzela, through gneva, you don't make a bracha. When it comes to a bracha, we're very delicate. You never make a bracha on anything that came through an avera. When it comes to tray for food, there happens to be a well-known debate between the Rambam and the Raavad. The Rambam holds you don't make a bracha on tray food at all. It's mashma from the Rambam any bracha, not before, not after, whether the food is also deraisa, derabanan, whether you ate it by mistake or on purpose. The Raavad seems to say you always make a bracha. There happens to be there's a major debate in the poskim. If the machloekes is so vast, does the Rambam hold you never do? The Raavad hold you always do? The Raavad writes, what? You're mainly eating treif, but don't make a bracha. Well, you should do a second crime. The Raavad said if someone's breath smells from one garlic, he should eat another garlic. He says if someone has one infraction, he should do another avera. The Raavad is mainly eating treif. You're mainly having a cheeseburger. Macha bracha. What?
It's a mitzvah b'avera.
It's a mitzvah b'avera, right. So that's why...
You got satiated.
Right. Right. So the
is part of the mitzvah.
We
Not
just said.
hefsher mitzvah.
We just said.
So
you need to just have the piece.
The bracha before.
that's definitely part of the Rambam's reason. That's definitely part of the Rambam's reason. But it also happens to be that over there, the brach itself is the mitzvah. You see, usually, like the case of matzah, we say, listen, you're yoitza with the matzah because you stole the wheat and you don't have to give, and now you turned it into matzah, so you owe the victim, you owe him cash, so you're allowed to eat the matzah, but don't make a brach on it because it's a little bit chutzpahdik to make a bracha when it came through theft. But if the bracha itself is the obligation because you're eating food, then it could be you're not allowed to avoid the bracha. When the bracha itself is the chiyuv, you're not allowed to eat food without making a bracha. So this bracha is different. A bracha on food, the Rai would say, is different. It's also to avoid such a bracha. A bracha on a mitzvah, it's not also to do a mitzvah without making a bracha. Or the Alter Rebbe does write somewhere that it's an issue to do a mitzvah without a bracha. The Chachamim frown upon doing a mitzvah without a bracha. When the Chachamim instituted making brachas on mitzvahs, they meant business and they were serious about it. And they don't want the brachas are not just dispensable. But nonetheless, it's not a mamash a prohibition to do away with the bracha. But on food, it's mamash a prohibition to do away with the bracha. So even if the food's asur, you don't have the right to say, I can just, mitzvah ba ba'aver is to throw away the bracha too. The Ravid would say, no, when the bracha itself is obligated because it's a bracha on food, then you got to make it as well. Anyhow, it's a big discussion on its own. It gets even more interesting because the Rambam holds you never make a bracha, but what if you're eating treif because your life is pashut in peril? So then everyone says the Rambam would agree, you make a bracha because you have to eat the food. Rabbeinu Yerucham, one of the Rishonim, the Talmud of the Rosh, says even if your life is in danger and you have to eat the treif, no bracha. And everyone wonders, how do you explain Rabbeinu Yerucham? How could you explain Rabbeinu Yerucham? So some contend, the Rogatchover seems to learn that you don't enjoy it. You only make bracha on food, on nanin that you enjoy. Right? Something which has no enjoyment, that's disgusting, you make no bracha. So even though you have to eat it to live, but it's disgusting to you. It's disgusting to you. Others, Tainab Pshat Rabbeinu Yerucham is, even though you're allowed to eat it because your life's in danger, it's still tray for food. Chachomim were not masakin to make a bracha on tray for food. Chachomim were masakin to make brachas. They never instituted to make a bracha on tray for food. But what if the tray for food is bread and you ate enough to be chayiv min ater to make birchas hamazon? Then you have a different shaila. Maybe Rabbeinu Yerucham would say you shouldn't make a birchas hamazon then. Biblically, you have to bench, you ate the requisite amount. Who cares? It's treif if you were allowed to eat it. So then you'd have to go with the Rogatchover that you pasha didn't enjoy it.
What about eating on Yom Kippur?
But if v'chalta v'savata, who said the Eibusha cares you didn't enjoy v'chalta v'savata? What? Okay, anyway, we're mamish getting sidetracked. Let's go back to, okay, hold on. Comes Rosh Hashanah, this is mamish kavaldik. Comes number 7. Rosh Hashanah is around the corner. The Sefer HaChinuch says the mitzvah of shofar is not to blow the shofar, it's to hear the shofar. Right? Says the Minchas Chinuch, Keinu Loshen Haram Kan. The Rambam says that, look in the Torah, look in the Achronim. We had a shir about this a while ago. I think actually some of the Seforim may have been there. I think, right, by that very shir, if I'm not mistaken. And... right, exactly. Punkt. So there's a major discussion. Rabbeinu Tam says the mitzvah of shofar is to blow. When it comes to Mikra Megillah, the mitzvah of Megillah is not to hear the Megillah; it's to lein the Megillah. Look at the bracha. Al Mikra Megillah. The mitzvah is to lein Megillah. When you hear someone else lein, it's like you leined. Shemei kain, it's like you leined. That's the. Rabbeinu Tam said the same thing by shofar. The mitzvah is to blow. When you hear someone blow, it's like you blew. The Rambam and the Chinuch say no. The mitzvah is to hear the shofar. When someone blows, they create a sound. You then listen in to that sound. The person provides the sound. You listen to the sound. It's like someone invites you to eat in their sukkah. Thank you very much for providing me the sukkah. Now I go in on my own and I sit in the sukkah. So says the Minchas Chinuch's opinion is, the mitzvah is not the blowing, the mitzvah is not the listening, the mitzvah is both. He and the Shagas Aryeh learn that the mitzvah is both, and he'll bring you proofs. The Shneim, both of them, the listening and the blowing is the mitzvah. One without the other doesn't work. I'll bring you a proof, he says. If the mitzvah is only to hear the sound, that means the person blowing is only providing to you the sound. If the mitzvah is only to hear, right, then what's the Baal Tokeya doing? He's doing a communal service. He's providing a sound, and then each person will just listen in. So then who cares who you hear from? Listen to a woman blow, listen to a guy. If you hear from someone who's not chayev like a woman, you're not yotze. Why not? Why not? Who cares who blew? It must be you need the blowing to transfer to you. Alma, I see the mitzvah is not just to hear, the mitzvah is to blow. The fact that you need the person blowing to be chayiv means he's being moitzi you in the blowing. Well, listen to what he says. You need the person blowing and your yoitze, dafka mechaveri hamechu. You need the tkiya to transfer to you. So maybe Rabbeinu Tam's right. Just blow. No, blowing without hearing doesn't work. Don't you know the din? If you put your head into a pit and you blow and all you hear is the echo, you're not yoitze. Why? Because you didn't hear it. Who needs to hear anything? Elamai, you have to blow and you have to hear. And he says better. What if you don't do them at the same time? What if you blow into the pit and then later you hear from a woman? So you heard and you blew. You blew it. You blew it. If you don't, the gam loyim einam. If it's not if it has to be simultaneous. For example, if you heard from someone who's not chayiv and then you blew in the pit, it doesn't work. You blew it. You need the shmiya and the tkiya to be at the same time. But he says, on the listening, you can't appoint someone to listen. On the listening, you got to do yourself. But on the tkiya, you could ask someone to blow for you. And it has to be someone who's chayiv, because they're blowing for you. They're going to transfer that for you. Just like when you hear Kiddush or you hear Megillah, you need to do it, but by hearing somebody else, it's like you did it. You need to blow, but by hearing someone blowing, it's like you did it. The Shmiya daf meher and you got to hear a lot. That's the Minchas Chinuch's take on shofar. And that's the Shagas Aryeh's take on shofar. If you remember from that shir, we said there was Reb Chaim Brisker actually, and the Avnei Nezer had a different take on shofar. A little bit different. Reb Chaim Brisker and the Avnei Nezer had a little bit of a different nuance. They said that when it comes to, by certain mitzvahs, you divide between the action of the mitzvah and the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Simchas Yom Tov, the Eibishter wants you to be happy. That's the fulfillment of the mitzvah. How do you get there? By eating flesh and drinking wine. There's the Maisa HaMitzvah and the fulfillment of the mitzvah. There's the Maisa and the fulfillment. The Avnei Nezer writes about a Sefer Torah. The fulfillment of the mitzvah is owning the Sefer Torah. That's the Kiyum. But the Eibishter wants it to come through a Maisa, which is Ksiva Sefer Torah. You have to write it. Or you get somebody to write it for you. So the Avnei Nezer and Reb Chaim Brisker say so too by the shofar. That's how they word it by the shofar. The fulfillment is the Eibishter wants you to hear it. But he wants that the hearing should come through a Maisa of blowing. And for the Maisa, you could make a shliach. Just like you get a shliach to write the Sefer Torah, you get a shliach to blow for you. But the fulfillment you got to do on your own. So it's very similar to the Minchas Chinuch, but they word it a bit differently. Anyhow.
You get a good Sefer Torah for you. It's not together blowing, not together.
No, because he's not kosher to write.
It's not about the blowing. It's not together. It's not considered Tkiyah Shofar if it's a lady. Nothing to do with her being Mamali Yochiyah. That's
the famous Chazon Ish who says that they can't provide a halachic sound, but if the mitzvah is just to hear Tkiyah Shofar, then who cares who blows? We know what a shofar is, and the voice, as we know what, who cares who's blowing? The voice of a shofar is the voice of a shofar. Let's go weiter. Number 8, another Minchas Chinuch. Actually, before number 8. Mestama, one of the most famous chidushim of the Minchas Chinuch, relates to Sukkos. It's not on the paper. One of the most famous chidushim of the Minchas Chinuch. So we know there's something called mitzvah haba ba'aveira. Got to be one of the most famous topics in halacha, right? You want to fulfill a mitzvah, but a mitzvah comes through an aveira. How could you fulfill a mitzvah if the mitzvah is coming at the cost of an aveira? How could you fulfill the Eibishter's rotzen when you're violating the Eibishter's rotzen? Right? The famous question of Tosfos in Masechta Sukkah. Tosfos asks in Masechta Sukkah, there's a pasuk that says that a sukkah cannot be stolen. And Tosfos asks, why do you have to have a special pasuk by a sukkah? Why would we not apply the regular rule of mitzvah haba ba'aveira? And Tosfos says it must be the regular rule of mitzvah haba ba'aveira is a rabbinic disqualification. That's how Tosfos creates the idea. It must be mitzvah ba b'aveira's rabbinic creation, and that's why sometimes you have a pasuk to make it a biblical issue. Fine, that's what Tosfos says. Comes the Minchas Chinuch in Parshas Emer in the midst of Sukkah, and he says an incredible idea. And this idea became so popular. Rabbi Yosef Engel latches onto it. All the big achronim, they talk about it and talk about it. Says the Minchas Chinuch, there's different types of mitzvahs. You have certain mitzvahs, the Eibush says, I want you to do it. I want you to take a lulav and esrog. I want you to wear tefillin. And then you have certain mitzvahs that are like circumstantial. If you have a house, have a mezuzah. You don't have to have a house. If you want meat, shecht, you don't have to have meat. If you want to divorce your wife, this is how you do it. You don't have to divorce your wife. If you want to get married, do kiddushin. You don't have to get married. Exactly. Chiyuvis or kiyumis is an obligation, or it depends on circumstance. If you have a four-cornered garment, you got to don tzitzis. You don't have to wear a four-cornered garment. On Pesach, if you want to wash and make a hamaitzi, you got to eat matzah. You can't have chametz, but you can eat fruit, except for the first night, but you got to have matzah. So too throughout Sukkot. Only the first night of Sukkot, there's an obligation, biblical, you have to enter into the sukkah, eat a kazayis of bread, under the schach, and have in mind, Laman Yedu Deir Seichem, the Basukkah, Sashavti, B'Shol, etc. The rest of Sukkot, if you are going to eat more than a kabeya of mazoinus or bread or this and that, then you got to do it in the sukkah. So says the Minchas Chinuch, he's talking about, let's say, sukkah and tzitzis. If the Eibishter really wanted me to wear tzitzis, why did Hashem not give a mitzvah that you have to wear a four-cornered garment with tzitzis, like he said about tefillin? Why didn't he do that? It's because the Eibishter is more concerned with the negative than the positive. It's almost like the Eibush is more concerned, I don't want to catch you walking with a four-cornered garment without tzitzis. If the Eibush really wanted tzitzis, he would have said, wear a four-cornered garment with tzitzis. If the Eibush was really interested in tzitzis, like he was with tefillin, he would have made sure we all wore a four-cornered garment with tzitzis. It's more the interest is, don't let me catch you with a four-cornered garment without tzitzis. And so too by Sukkah, if the Eibishter wanted us to eat in the Sukkah every day, he would say, you have to eat every day, every night, a meal in the Sukkah. He didn't say that. Which means it's almost like the Eibishter says, I don't want to catch you eating a meal outside the Sukkah. So here's the thing. By tefillin or lulav, when you're trying to do the will of Hashem, if the will of Hashem is being done with a violation of the Eibishter's will, it's a mitzvah ba b'aveira. And he says it could be a biblical issue, not like today. It's a biblical issue. You can't fulfill the Eibishter's will when you're violating the Eibishter's will. But let's say tzitzis, for example, or let's say sukkah. Let's say sukkah in middle of sukkahs, right? It's a stolen sukkah, right? So you're going to say, it's a mitzvah haba b'aveira. It's a mitzvah haba b'aveira. So since it's stolen, it's against the will of Hashem, so therefore you don't fulfill the mitzvah. And therefore what? It's like I'm eating outside the sukkah. I'm not outside the sukkah. You can't say I'm outside the sukkah. If the Eibishter wanted me to be in the sukkah throughout sukkahs, he would have given me a mitzvah every day eating the sukkah. That's not what he said. If you wash, make sure it's not outside the sukkah. So what he cares is make sure you don't eat outside the sukkah. You can't say I'm outside the sukkah. The sukkah may be a mitzvah ba b'aveira, but you can't say I'm outside the sukkah. There's no chiyuv. There's no chiyuv when it comes to food. It's only that if you're going B'sukkah's Teshuva, if you're going to eat a meal, then you have to eat it in the sukkah. But you don't have to have that meal. Taka, once you eat that meal, you become chayiv to eat in the sukkah. And that's why you make a bracha. The famous Baal Amor. The Baal Amor says, why on Pesach don't you, every time you eat matzah, why don't you make a bracha ala chilas matzah? Because he says there's a difference. On Pesach, whenever you take a bite of matzah, you never have an obligation to eat matzah, except the first night. But on Sukkot, when you do end up eating a meal, you do have an obligation to be in the sukkah. So it makes sense to make a bracha to be in the sukkah. But still, you didn't have to eat that meal. When you do eat enough food, Chol Hamoed Sukkos, then you have to be in that sukkah, right? But it's discretionary. You didn't have to go down that path. Once you go, you become obligated. So you make a bracha leishev b'sukkah. But you didn't have to go down that path. You didn't have to go down that path. So it means what the Eibishter wants is that you shouldn't be outside the sukkah. If he really wants you to be there, he would have made sure every day you have to have a meal in the sukkah. So it's a whole different type of mitzvah. What God wants is to make sure you're not outside the sukkah. So even if the sukkah is a mitzvah ba'aveira, I'm not trying to fulfill the will of God. I just have to make sure I'm not outside the sukkah. You can't say I'm outside the sukkah.
So you fulfill the mitzvah, you don't
That's why you need a pasuk.
You don't get schar for it. Like, why would you?
That's not the purpose about getting schar. It's just about not being caught outside. You can't say I'm outside. Right. So this is a very interesting, you see, this is another a famous gedank of the... And Rabbi Yosef Engel takes us further about why women shouldn't be able to make a bracha of leishev basukah and sukkah, and fascinating things. We move. B'chlal, the Sfardim generally don't allow women to make a bracha on any mitzvahs aseh bound by time. They follow the Rambam. The Rambam b'chlal holds making a bracha when it's not necessary is a isur d'oraisa of loy sisa. Rabbeinu Tam holds it's only the Rabbeinu Tam holds if you start make a bracha boirin nefashos rabbos, you're praising Hashem. You're not saying Hashem's name in vain. You're praising Hashem. It's the Chachamim said you can't. The Rambam holds it's d'oraisa, and therefore the Ashkenazim who follow Rabbeinu Tam are much more lenient. We make a bracha on Halal Rosh Chodesh. We make a bracha on Minhagim. The Sfardim don't. We allow women to make a bracha on mitzvahs esed bound by time. The Sfardim don't. The Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rambam not to. The Chidoth 250 years ago in Eretz Yisrael wanted to bring the minig to follow the Ashkenazim that women should make bracha on mitzvahs esed bound by time. The Chacham Tzvi, who is Ashkenazi, wanted to do fakert, that even the Ashkenazi women should follow the Sfardim, not to make in Budapest. Started from Budapest. The Chacham Tzvi wanted that the Ashkenazim shouldn't make a bracha. Women. It happens to be that some Ashkenazi women who follow the Ramon Rabbeinu Tam, who make a bracha mitzvah bound by time, don't do it by sukkahs, leishev basukah. A number of reasons are given. One of them is because, you see, lulav and esrog, if a woman does it every day, so they took upon themselves an obligation. But if a woman doesn't eat every meal in the sukkah, so what, one meal yeah, one meal not, they make a whole joke out of it. So now I make a bracha that I have to. And breakfast day, they ate the pizza outside, and now they make a bracha inside. And but others say the very fact that the man himself didn't have to do the mitzvah, it's voluntary mitzvah, Chol Hamoed, you didn't have to wash inside, right? So therefore the woman. But Rabbi Yosef Engel goes based on this Minchas Chinuch that there's no. It's about not being caught outside more than the ultimate going inside. That's why women shouldn't make the bracha. Anyhow, lots of very interesting things. But now we come to the idea of Teshuva, which is relevant to this week's parsha, and a beautiful idea of the Minchas Chinuch. And the Rebbe Mamish says a beautiful icing on the cake. The Minchas Chinuch in Parshas Nosai goes through the mitzvah of Teshuva, and he many layers. One kasha the Minchas Chinuch asks is the following. The Gemara says in Kiddushin, if somebody betroths a woman, al manos, that I am a tzaddik gomor, and the guy's a Rasha. She is mekudeshes misafek, questionably betrothed, because perhaps in his mind he thoughts of tshuva. Frek the Minchas Chinuch, the Rambam holds in order to do tshuva, you have to verbalize, you have to do vidu, you have to confess, verbal confession. Where was the verbal confession? Where's the verbal confession? That's the famous shaila of the Minchas Chinuch. And the Minchas Chinuch, first the Minchas Chinuch wants to answer that you can do complete tshuva in your heart. You could do complete tshuva in your heart, and you have charata, and the Eibusha wipes away all your averis. The mitzvah of tshuva, to fulfill it, it's a mitzvah b'dibur, like kriyishma, you have to do it b'peh. If you did it in your heart, you don't get credit for the mitzvah of tshuva, but everything else you accomplish, and the Eibusha is moichel all your averis. That's option 1. Option 2 says the Minchas Chinuch, a deeper nuance. The Minchas Chinuch says, whoa. When you decide that you're going to be a good person from now on, you're a tzaddik gomer. You have all of this baggage from the past, and the Eibishter hasn't yet forgiven you for the past. That's a different equation completely. You can be a tzaddik gomer mikanu lahaba, even though you haven't yet done tshuva, and you haven't yet had any kapara for the past. Look what he writes in number 9. V'nir, it seems to me, Doloi kasha im noimar, it's not difficult if you say that you're not atoned without verbal confession. From the Gemara in Kiddushin, that even if you're a Rosh Gomer, we say maybe you thought tshuva in your heart and you're a tzaddik. He says like this, tzaddik for Rosh does not depend on kapara at all. There are many averis that you're not atoned just by doing tshuva, but nonetheless, if you have charata, you become a tzaddik, even though you have this big peckle on your back. So too over here. Hachanami nehide ein loy kapara b'tshuva belev. He says if this guy who's mekadesh this woman in a moment, in a fleeting thought, it could be taki, he doesn't atone his whole package of averis. Nonetheless, he's a tzaddik because he had a bit of charata, and has all of this package of averis. It's a separate cheshbon completely. In other words, what he's saying is, to fulfill the mitzvah of tshuva, you need to do verbal confession. That's what the Rambam holds. And therefore, in order to have kapara for all your averis, you need to go down that path. And if you don't have verbal confession, you don't fulfill the mitzvah of tshuva, and you won't have kapara on your averis. Fine. So you have lots of baggage of your past. But if in your heart you took on a good achlota for the future, you're a tzaddik gomer. You're a tzaddik gomer. So it's an incredible idea. What?
Right in the beginning.
Of the Geras HaTshuva.
No. That B'shasa Vera, you're a Rosh Gomer, and then as soon as you do Tshuva, he does. Right, but it doesn't say if he did a verbal Tshuva or not.
Right. Nikrat tzaddik gomer, right. So, no, but what, so, if you take a good achlata to change your ways, you're good. You're a tzaddik gomer as far as right now you're a great person. You have all this baggage of the past, that's something else. And it's almost like, who said you even have an obligation to go back and fix your past? Who said that tshuva is a mitzvah? Who said doing tshuva is a mitzvah? Who said you have an obligation to do tshuva? What does tshuva mean? If tshuva means to stop your averis, of course, if someone's a serial killer, then you have to stop killing people. If someone is a habitual sinner, you have to stop doing the averis. But tshuva doesn't mean to stop doing your averis. That you have to do, you have to stop doing the avera. Tshuva means to go back to your past and try and change that. Tshuva means to verbally confess, to have tremendous charata, and try and clean up the mess of the past. Who said you have to do that? The Minchas Chinuch Taka holds there's no mitzvah to do tshuva. There's no obligation to do tshuva. He learns in the Rambam. See, the Rambam doesn't say there's an obligation to do tshuva. The Rambam says, you know what tshuva is? When you want to repent, you should verbally declare and you should confess. You should be mitzvah and confess your averis. So the Minchas Chinuch asks, it's almost like you don't have to do tshuva. It's if you want to do tshuva, the mitzvah is, this is how you go about it. If you want to eat meat, this is how you go about it. You go shech. If you want to do tshuva, this is how you go about it. There's no mitzvah to do tshuva, taka. You have to become a good person. That's not tshuva. That's mikanu lahaba. Tshuva is to start going back to the past. Tshuva is, if you want to go and clean up the mess of the past, there's a route to take. You start to confess. There's a whole avodah, a broken heart, charata, confession. And you go back and you cleanse your past. There's taka no obligation to do that. He writes in number 10. The Minchas Chinuch famously says, Im Kain, he says in number 10, the mitzvah of tshuva is like other mitzvahs in Chumash. It's not a mitzvah you have to do or you can't do. Rak ha'asiyah al toyer kach v'kach nachsheves mitzvah. There's a description of if you want to do, this is what you should do. Like Gerishin, if you want to do it, you don't have to do it. But if you go down that route, this is how you do it. Or toyin v'nitin, or dinei tumas meis, or shar tumas, etc. The dinei mitzvah, if you do it, this is how you do it in order to get the credit for the mitzvah. Hachanami. The Torah says if you want to do tshuva, it should be in this way, to confess v'kadomer, and to detail. And that way your tshuva will be accepted. And that's one of the 613. Aval eina mevatel klal shum mitzvah if you don't do tshuva. If you don't do tshuva, you're not being mevatel a mitzvah. Now, how does it make any sense? It's very simple. Of course you have to stop doing your averis. That's not tshuva though. That from fixing the future you have to do, and then you become a tzaddik gomer for the future. Tshuva is then to cleanse the mess of the past. That you don't have to do. If you want to do it, there's a process, and it's a great thing to do, and it's when you do it, it's a mitzvah. So the Rebbe in the Sichos quotes this Minchas Chinuch, and in one Sich in number 11, no, it's a mitzvah, it's v'yisvadu, it's avoinam in Parshas Nosai.
So that's the past. The Yisvadu Savinam is the past.
Yeah, to confess what you did.
What's the...
Yeah, no, to stop doing your averis.
That's...
Yeah, no, it's in any particular aver you're doing, that aver demands you to stop. You're stealing, treif, whatever it might be. Look in number 11, it's a beautiful sikha. Umavubazeh says the Rebbe wants to know why by hakafas, the greatest simcha, the greater the simcha, the less of an obligation. So the Rebbe says like this: Tihi anisenes, the greater the simcha and the deeper that it is, kach mismayat toikef achiv. The greater the joy is, the less the obligation is. Why? Kasher yesh tzivu yala adam, when there's an obligation on a person, harezeh gufa k'moisiba mibachutz. When I instruct you, it's almost like there's something from the outside, which is like forcing you to do what you're instructed to do. The less that there's an instruction, the deeper the joy, and it means the more deep the joy is rooted in your soul. V'cheinu be'inyan at-tshuva. The Rebbe says in the Sikha, I'm explaining to you why the Minchas Chinuch holds there's no obligation to actually repent. Because complete tshuva and true tshuva comes from the essence of the soul. Sherak mishom nimshech chayes chodosh. Okay, let's skip the brackets. Lochen, because true tshuva comes from the essence of the soul, there's no commandment to do tshuva. Rak, when a person does tshuva, bebchira hachofsh, is the guy with complete true will. Not even because Torah instructed you, but complete true will. Harezeh raya, that the tshuva comes from the depth and the essence of the soul. Because true tshuva comes from the essence of the soul, there can't be any command. There can't be any instruction. When there's an instruction, it means there's something outside of you telling you to do it. When something comes from the true essence of your soul, you're not commanded to do it. But you should know, the Rebbe doesn't always agree. Look at number 12, an interesting letter over here, that the Rebbe writes to somebody, B'mishna soif perek hey da'avos. In the 5th perek of Pirkei Avos, it says azoi, that ben shishim l'zikna, ben shivim l'seva, right? When you're 70 years old, seva. Shishim zikna, shivim seva. It says in the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, right? Mipnei seva tokim, you got to get up for a seva. Avadarta pnei zaken, you got to honor the pnei zaken. What's the difference of a seva and a zaken? Well, it says in Pirkei Avos, a seva is 70 years old, and a zaken is 60 years old. So what does the pasuk mean? You got to get up for a 70 years old and then a 60-year-old. So let the pasuk just say a 60-year-old. Well, the Gemara understands that seva means a 70-year-old, and zaken actually means zeh shekana chachma. Zaken means a chacham. So if the guy's not a chacham, you only stand up for him if he's 70. And that's the psak in Shulchan Aruch. He says, look in Baba Basra, ein seva pchusa mishivim, seva is 70 years old plus, v'chein pasuk b'Shulchan Aruch yerdei reish mem dalet. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, you got to stand up for a zaken is zeh shekon a chachma, wise man, a seva, 70 years old and up. But in the Siddur of the Arizal, in the beginning, Dinei Beis HaKnesses, the Arizal says you got to stand up for someone who's 60 years old. And the Chidor brings. So the Arizal writes different than the Shulchan Aruch. The Arizal says you got to stand up for a 60-year-old, even if it's not a Chacham. So where does Arizal get that from? So the Rebbe said this al pi ma shekosav b'tikunei zoyer. You know what it says in Tikunei Zoyer? Leis seva pchusa mishitin chulu. The Tikunei Zoyer says, you know what seva and zikna is? Different than the Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos says seva is shivim, zikna is shishim. What happens when you turn 50? Eitza. In the Tikunei Zoyer, it has the list differently. When you're 50, you're a zaken already. The Tikunei Zoyer says when you're 50, you're a zaken. When you're 60, seva. So the Tikunei Zoyer says when you're 60, you're seva. So the Rebbe says, how do I know that's pshat in the Arizal? Kein muchach tam ha'arizal b'shar ha'mitzvah shloi b'sefer ha'likutim. If you look in the Shar ha'mitzvah or b'sefer ha'likutim, right, from Reb Chaim Vital, it says there that the Arizal is going with the Tikunei Zoyer against the Pirkei Avos, which means we're still learning the pasuk in Kedoshim that Vadarta pnei zaken means zeh shekana chachma. Mipnei seva takum means a guy who's not a Talmud Chacham, just an old guy. But seva doesn't mean 70; it means 60. Says the Rebbe, but you know what the Minchas Chinuch says? The Minchas Chinuch mitzureish nun zayin. The Minchas Chinuch quotes the Arizal as well, and the Minchas Chinuch learns the Arizal differently. The Minchas Chinuch pirish psak Arizal mishum choshesh l'das hatargum. The Minchas Chinuch learns the Arizal's choshesh to unclus. You know how unclus learns the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim? Mipnei seva takum refers to the Talmud Chacham. Vadarta pnei zaken refers to the elder. And based on Pirkei Avos that zaken is 60 years old, says the Minchas Chinuch, that's how the Arizal came to the conclusion you got to stand up for someone who's 60. That's how the Minchas Chinuch learns. That really the Arizal is going with the Pirkei Avos too. That seva is shivim and zikna is shishim. But the Targum flips the pasuk the way the Gemara flips it. That the Vardarta Pnei Zaken, according to the Targum, is the Gemara learns that's the Talmud Chacham. According to the Targum, the Seva is the Talmud Chacham, and Pnei Zaken is the elder. And according to Pirkei Avos, the Zaken is Shishim. So the Rebbe says, no, V'ulai ishtamitze mashakot ha'shar mitzvah l'kutim. The Minchas Chinuch is giving a nice guess, but he saw the Siddur of the Arizal, but he didn't see the other Kisvei Arizal. Had he seen the other Kisvei Arizal, he would have seen the full picture. He would have seen that it's not because the Arizal was choshesh to the Targum Unclus. Now here's a Rosh Tevis. I have no idea what the Rosh Tevis is over here. Beis Lamed Aleph Chaf. I actually did a Google search of it, and the only thing that came up was this letter of the Rebbe. So I don't know. I saw in the Hiskashrus they bring this letter. They say it's Balav Hochi, but that's probably a mistake. I don't know what the Rosh Tevis is supposed to be. Motzino Kama Poiskim. The Rebbe says like this: you want to be machmir like the Zoyer against the Gemara, that's one thing, but to be machmir like the Unclus against the Gemara. Ein svara kazur, to be machim like Unclus again. The Rebbe doesn't like the whole idea that Arizal be machim like Unclus against the Gemara. There is a Rogatchover though that he says that there's a Rambam who goes like Unclus in certain cases. But it's interesting over here. The Rebbe says that the Minchas Chinuch had he in the full package. So the Rebbe has no problem arguing. There are times the Rebbe has no problem arguing with the Minchas Chinuch. You know, the Rebbe felt he was a contemporary. although he was a generation before him. The Rebbe once had a debate with Shlomo Yosef Zevin about a certain issue with the Minchas Chinuch, and the Rebbe says, I'm not mechuyev to mataritz his words. The Rebbe felt no problem arguing with him, but there's still such a tremendous chavivus. The Rebbe quotes him Keseder again and again whenever he could. And the fact is, the Minchas Chinuch is a tremendous classic. And I think in number 11, this is a sikh in Chelik Lamed Ches, a sikh about Teshuva. Now's the season of Teshuva. And where the Rebbe in the sikha says, let me explain to you, apipnimish inyanim, to explain the Minchas Chinuch, why there would be no mitzvah to, you see how much hadras covered the Rebbe had for him. And it's interesting, the fact that he was a Chassidisha, but in the Litvische world they take him for one of their own. You know, the Chassam Sofer as well. Years ago, I once heard a Polish Rosh Yeshiva once say, alle meinen, as the Chassam Sofer is gewinn a Chassidisha. Aber bei ihm ist es nicht gewinn. Everyone thinks that the Chassam Sofer was a Chassidisha, was a Polish, but really he wasn't. And I was thinking to myself, what? Whoever thought the Chassam Sofer was a Chassidisha? I mean, why would anyone ever think that? And then it dawned upon me that in that particular Chassidish group, or by many Chassidishes, the Chassam Sofer is so accepted that they literally feel like he's one of their own, to the point that they have to point out that, by the way, he wasn't a Chassidish. And you see by the Minchas Chinuch as well, that to many Litvishes, they don't even assume that he was a Chassidish. He's so well angenommen. And in Lubavitch as well, he's someone that you see that Rebbe had so much chavivus for his Torah. And Reb Chaim Tzanzer gave a prophecy that we will learn his Torah till Mashiach comes. And tonight we went on a bit of a journey through some of his ideas. So we were Yoitzer Reb Chaim Tzanzer's prophecy, Mashiach Ken Shein Kumen, and the Minchas Chinuch can give us some more shiurim.
We get back all of his Torahs that were burnt.
What does it?